Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Corby Connection. I'm Rick Stoll from the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, and tonight again, we are going inside Notre Dame Stadium. We are really grateful to have the voice of the Fighting Irish, Mike Collins, joining us this evening. Before we get to Mike, I'm going to turn it over to your host and creator of Corby Connection, Mr. Pat Cawley. Pat?
Thank you, Rick. And Mike, it is such a thrill to talk to you. Also a little bit intimidating to talk to a real pro, as I'm an amateur interviewer. But,
Okay.
We're catching you at an interesting time since you have just retired after 39 years of being the public address announcer for Notre Dame Stadium. So you must have a lot of big thoughts about processing what that experience meant to you. But I'll start just by asking, did you ever think as a kid listening on the radio to Notre Dame football in Pittsburgh that one day you would be the voice of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish?
No, not at all. In fact, I didn't think I was going to go to Notre Dame. I had been enrolled elsewhere and got accepted and was actually all set to go off to Duquesne in Pittsburgh. And I got a late acceptance at Notre Dame, and my father just changed courses right then and there. So that's how that ended up. No, I wouldn't have thought that one bit. That would have been, to me, we didn't have all the money in the world when I was young. But when Notre Dame would come into Pitt Stadium when I was a kid, my dad always made sure we had tickets to see the Irish. And it was like, I thought that was going to be the pinnacle of my Irish experience. So
Mike, you must have had some idea, though, that being in sports journalism or being a public address announcer would be in your future. I saw somewhere that even as a young boy, you were so-called calling games, maybe in your basement by yourself, calling Roberto Clemente coming up to the plate for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So
that's
is that
true.
something you always knew you wanted to do?
I think so. Ironically, everybody just assumes who didn't know my South Bend career that I was in sports journalism. Actually, I was a news anchor. I was in news. And that way, I didn't go into sports on purpose, for a full-time gig, because tell you the truth, I thought if you got in too deep, met too many of them, smelled too many locker rooms, you just might not like it or enjoy it anymore. But the PA thing was always in the back of my head. And I got my start when the initial Notre Dame hockey PA announcer, Jack Lloyd, who also did basketball, by the way, he decided to spend his winters in Arizona. So I went to Lefty Smith, the hockey coach, and kind of begged him if he'd let me have a shot at the job. And he gave it to me right on the spot. And I'll never forget his encouraging words. He did not say it exactly this way, but you can fill in what might have been a blank. Just don't screw it up, he said. So then next weekend, I'm doing hockey. So that's what I was doing. And I told this story many times. I had never done football play-by-play or PA in my life. My high school was too small for a team. And so I sort of didn't bring that up when they called me about working my first football game.
And I'd like to talk about that first game. And I hope you didn't volunteer that information and get yourself unhired. But long before you got the call to do the first game as a PA announcer, you came to Notre Dame and you did look into journalism. Tell us how you started down the path of journalism, because eventually, as you've just brought up, you had a career with WNDU and WSBT. So you were a reporter, an anchor, a news director, right, producer. But how did you start down that path to begin with?
I guess I always loved the news too. I can remember as a youngster, my dad had an office for a while with U.S. Steel downtown. And sometimes he'd go in on Saturdays, and he always would give me $1 or $2. I remember it would go a long way at that time. And I went down to the nearby Greyhound station and I would buy out-of-town newspapers. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, to read the Milwaukee Journal or the Chicago Sun-Times. I don't know. But I always loved news. I tell people, so I started full-time in 1968 those who are old enough to remember, if every year in the news business had been like 1968, I probably would have been dead at the age of 40. I mean, it was just all the things that happened in 68. And the one story I'll tell is that was the last time the Indiana Democratic primary was important until Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama met in, what would that have been, 2008, 2008. So the candidates were all traversing the state, and I happened to know the campaign manager for Bobby Kennedy was a Notre Dame professor. So Bobby came to Notre Dame, spoke at Stephen Center, and I was adamant that I wanted an interview with him. Well, you know how it is. They run around, they get done, they get in the car, they get in the plane, they go somewhere else. So to my photographer, as they finished up, I said, look, I know the back way to the airport. Let's see if we can beat them out there. Now, today I would be shot for what I did. But we drove the car almost to the tarmac. And we're racing out, and he's got the big old camera then over the shoulder. And I'm looking, and I see Bobby Kennedy going up the stairs and into the plane. And I'm thinking, shoot. Then I looked closer, and I saw Ethel Kennedy. I went up, I straight up to Ethel Kennedy. And I played the sympathy card. And she said, let me see what I can do. And she brought him down from the plane for the only one-on-one interview he did in South Bend. What was significant about that is hours later was when Dr. King was shot in Memphis. 2 months to the day, Bobby was shot in Los Angeles. I have here a picture that somebody took a picture over my shoulder, a Polaroid that I cherish to this day. So that year, the convention and everything that was going on, it was like, holy smokes, this is interesting. And I did love news journalism. I did.
I can only imagine.
Side beat. I had always been doing something for football, keeping stats, sometimes taking photos. I think the only time I sat in the stands at Notre Dame was my freshman year. I swear. I was always doing something. I was basically hanging around.
I can only imagine the stories you have from a career in journalism and getting to see a presidential candidate before Secret Service was really a thing is pretty amazing. Eventually, you became the voice in the stadium. So when you would say over the PA, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen," everybody knew it was showtime. It was time for Notre Dame.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. At some point, marketing departments are taking over all sports, including college football. And a couple of times they've dropped in the past my welcome. And I said, you know what? It's monkey see, monkey do with marketing. I'm telling you what this welcome means. It means exactly what you just said. It means they've been out there not paying much attention to anything. Of course, they listen to the band. When I say good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome, it's like it finally hits 70-some thousand people. Oh, it's almost game time. You're right. And then I came up with a goofy idea of having fun with the weather forecast, especially in this day and age when they can get the weather forecast on their phone. They don't need me. And I would work things in that weather forecast. I knew they loved lousy weather. I knew they loved wind chills. Then I started putting in musical lyrics from Van Morrison and Bruce Springsteen. I think my all-time favorite was, it was a nasty November day. And I think I quoted Guns N' Roses. And I said, you can't light a candle in a cold November rain, but you can certainly play football. And the place went nuts. Okay.
I think you were hanging out with Sergeant Tim McCarthy too much, but I can tell you I was there for some of that and really appreciated it. I think what you're describing is that so much of your approach to being the PA announcer comes down to one word, and that is energy. You would bring your own energy, and I saw some of the behind the scenes videos of you prepping for a game day, and so you brought nervous energy to the job, but you also read the energy of the crowd and responded appropriately.
You got to ride the crowd, dude. That's why I tell people my job's much easier when the place is going nuts, because I can just ride the wave. You know what I'm saying? The wave of the crowd. Otherwise, especially in the past when most of our fans were sitting on their hands, Sometimes I felt like I was trying to wake the dead. And, listen, our fans are sophisticated. And if I'm going to start yelling at them, come on up and cheer, fans, and it's 35-10 Tulsa, they're going to say, is he out of his mind? You came very close. I used 2 words to describe my attitude: be professionally enthusiastic. Don't be a cheerleader. Whatever you do, that's the advice I got. So it was 2 days before the Michigan game when Roger Baldessari called me and asked me to do the game. I was like completely stunned. I also had not done football, but I had a friend who got me in touch with a long time public address announcer for my beloved Pittsburgh Pirates, Art McKinnon, a legend. He also, by the way, was the only white man who ever worked full time for the Homestead Grays. In any event, I called Art up to give me advice. And he said, let me ask you something. Do they have cheerleaders at Notre Dame? I said, yeah, we have cheerleaders. Of course we do. And he says, well, good. Don't you be one of them. Then he said, now, how much do they charge for those tickets out there? And I said, I don't know. Back then, it was probably $35 or something. I said, I don't know for sure. And he says, good. Well, keep in mind, nobody ever paid a dime of the ticket price to hear the PA announcer. And I carried that with me for all 39 years. All 39 years. No, don't. Too many PA announcers think somehow they're part of the show, and they let their ego get in the way of the game. Nobody came to hear you, dude.
As true as that might be, you brought a certain seasoning to it, though. As you've already acknowledged, and they already knew what the weather report was, but the way that you told it and the way that you welcomed them was something that they responded to. And so, it was almost like when you said, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or here come the Irish, you were taking a pressure relief valve off of 80,000 screaming fans. I mean, so that does add to the experience.
That's very nice. I think you're right. And the other thing that happened along the way is after I left broadcasting, by the way, if you're ever going to quit your job and begin retirement, never do it up north at the end of November. I was bored by January. So I went out to campus and applied for a part-time job. And the job I got was, at first I thought, this is beneath me. I checked the kids in for lunch at the South Dining Hall. The most enjoyable job I ever had. Well, I got to know the kids and talk to them, met all of the football players, especially when they were young. And somehow this old band became wildly popular with the students. I mean, they would come in with their cameras and so they from that point on, they became sort of my junior fan club or something. And I love them too. So I think they probably told you I'm on this website now, cameo.com. Do you know about that?
I sure do.
Pass the word, because I have to do my publicity myself. But I did it for 2 reasons. Certainly not the money. I'm basically paying for my beer. But in any event, it hit me after my last game in about 2 weeks that was really hurting me was it was the first time in my adult life I did not have a direct connection to Notre Dame. First time in my adult life. And this is a way for me to stay connected with people. And I've done some for people who, their buddy is ill. Dad's been a fan for 82 years. And I put my heart and soul into those, just like I did being the PA announcer. So go to cameo.com, look it up. I'm the cheapest date you can ever get. So
I will provide a link to that Cameo site for people when we send out this conversation. It really is a neat thing where you can get people who are very famous suddenly show up giving you a personalized message. And, after you're done having Mike speak to your best friend on their birthday, you can have Manti Te'o or Jerome Bettis or other people like that.
You can get, what's that boxer's name? Mayweather?
Is he on there?
Yeah, for $999.
You're a steal then. What a bargain.
$999. Let me tell you something. Nicole Kidman better come to the house and have dinner with me.
Mike, I wanted to tell you a personal story related to what you said about being not one of the cheerleaders and just doing your job without ego. The last time Penn State was in the Notre Dame Stadium, and as you know, as a Pittsburgh native, we are in Pennsylvania surrounded by Penn State fans.
Yep.
They were, there with us. And as far as opposing team fan bases go, they're pretty good. And one of them said that he was pleasantly surprised by this guy calling the game in the stadium because it seemed
nice.
well, he said it seemed like you're showing as much enthusiasm for a 10-yard gain by Penn State as you would for a 10-yard gain by Notre Dame. And it was like you were enthused by the fact that there's football going on, not that it's one team or another. And I guess I'd never noticed that because I grew up listening to your voice and I didn't watch any other team. So I guess the question is, you're a Notre Dame man through and through. How tough was it during the big, important games, the games of the century, not to get a little more excited for Notre Dame football? And I say that knowing that you're a journalist first and foremost.
Well, I probably did get more excited, but that would have been leveled off by the excitement of the crowd, of course. But to go back to your preamble here, another philosophy I carried on: never ever diss the other team. Never ever do it. I had people over the years begging me to call USC Southern Cal. Well, they do not want to be called Southern Cal. You can call them USC, you can call them SC, you can call them Southern California. And people would say, yeah, do that. And I said, you know what? Notre Dame doesn't need bulletin board material in the SC locker room from the dumb PA announcer. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. By the way, the best teams I ever worked with from a management standpoint are, in fact, SC and Navy. No, I don't want anybody getting mad at me. SC made me an honorary Trojan this season. I'm not kidding you. They sent me shirts and everything. I'm an honorary Trojan. How about that? I think that's really cool.
That's great. How did you earn that honor?
Tim Testaloni, their longtime sports information director, always praised me. He would send me a note or something like that. And he says, you continue to be the only visiting public address announcer who always got the Samoan names correct. And I always just loved Tim and the Navy people. And I take it, my attitude is, I know it's big time. Tons of money involved. But to me, there still should be a collegiate feel to what's going on down there. That's how I look at it.
Well, Mike, you've talked a lot about your overall attitude and approach about the role of the PA announcer. And, I can go over and over about how you are an influential part of Notre Dame football history, but you've kept the right attitude about it, but you really have left a mark. When the players come out of the tunnel, now engraved over that tunnel are the words, "Here come the Irish." And
I was the last person who found that out. I never saw it.
Well, where did it come from? Because everybody who is watching this interview has heard you say, "Here come the Irish." And then there was an explosion in the stadium of enthusiasm and out came the players. Where did that come from?
By accident. It was one of the big games, and it was the Florida State game. Was that 92?
93.
So, listen, I get all pumped up too. And so the Irish came out, and I must have turned my valve on, and I just said, "Here come the Irish." So after the game, went to the car, and my wife, Melissa, was there. And she says to me, like, "Oh, I sure like that." And I said, "You liked what? We won?" No. Where'd you come up with that? "Here come the Irish." And I said, I spit it out. She says, "You should do that every week." I swear I saw it. And I said, "You sure of that?" I said, "Maybe I should just save it for big games." No, she says, she's honest to God, she was and is a marketing director. She says, "Oh no, that'll be your phrase forever." She was right. So, I couldn't believe how big it became. Though I've never gotten a dime off of any T-shirts or anything. So
I was going to say is not only emblazoned on the stadium itself, it's on T-shirts, it's everywhere. I'm sure you've been approached with people with with their phones asking you to record it. It's definitely, from a marketing standpoint, it's catchy, and that's what you go for. You're that energy. You stoke the crowd with that.
And the fact that it's on that tunnel is pretty cool. They did a photo shoot the Wednesday before the Clemson game, which I thought they were just doing for me, for mementos. And Melissa and I went out and for this photo shoot, and it was just a stupendous autumn day in South Bend, gorgeous. And so they're taking the pictures, and somehow I'll send one to Jim so you can maybe insert it or something. But I came up with one idea, and it's Melissa and I leaning on each side of the goalpost, the northern goalpost, and then the shots taken from the tunnel. And I said to Melissa, that's the best picture of the two of us since our wedding photo. That's how good that photo is. And then they took another one of me pointing up to the "Here Come the Irish" like that and gave it to me. Well, then I guess this would be new for your members is, I knew they would do something for me. I mean, just made sense. So the Wednesdays before home games, I always go out to the same room and do pregame recordings, for some of the timeouts. So I got out there that day and I found out that Melissa was in cahoots with them. And they had a reception. Now, they could only get 14 people in the room by university COVID restrictions or whatever. But even Jack Swarbrick showed up. Never talked to me in 11 years, but he showed up and talked to me that day. So here's the funny part of the story. Well, right away, I see this collage of pictures about this big. And you know what fracture frame is? Where you send a photo to this company and it comes back in glass? But a lot of your club members will know. Well, this is a collage set in glass. And it covered more than PA. One of the photos of me doing the last ever interview as president with Father Ted. Some other things. I'm with Kevin White. I'm at Yankee Stadium with my crew. Oh, it's just gorgeous. But also, there was this big thing on an easel covered. Well, I knew they were going to have to do a ceremony. So they go through with it. I'm staring at that thing, Pat. And I said, oh, Lord, please don't let this be a portrait of me. I said, no offense politically, but I'm no more putting up a portrait of me at the condo than I'm putting up one of Donald Trump. I'm just not putting it up at the condo. Well, they get to the unveiling, and it is a gorgeous framed official number 39 home jersey. I'll bet the glass in the frame's $500. And the way it's done with a gold outline. So that's hanging right in my living room here in the condo. And so that means a lot to me. I always wanted a game ball. Never got one of those, but maybe someday. So, yeah, that's what they gave me. We had a good time. And the football team sent Ron Paulus over to it. And so he and I were talking. And he said, I want you to know two things. He says, if anybody ever tells you that the players don't hear their name, they're lying to you. He says, I'm pretty sure I heard my name every time. And I said, Ron, I was just thinking, I'm pretty sure I called your name more than any other player in my career. I said, it has to be you or possibly Rick Meyer, maybe. I don't know. But I said, and he said, yeah. And I've heard times, somebody will make a tackle. And I'll hear below me, Mama going, oh, that's my boy. That's my boy. They hear that stuff. So if it's important to them, then it's important to me. That's why in a blowout game or late in the season, I tell my spotters, I want you to find every kid that comes into this game who hasn't been in the game. And I said that kid's going to get on the PA system if he was within 15 yards of the tackle, or if he came within 3 yards of a block. I'm going to say the key block was thrown by.
That's fantastic. And you just mentioned your spotters. So I want to go up into the box with you and give people an idea of what that's like. So you don't just show up and start talking. You have a team laser focused with binoculars, watching certain aspects of the game to give you the information you need. So tell me how that works.
Well, I set up my own system. Well, first of all, in effect, I've worked in 3.5 press. I'm not in the press box anymore. I'm on the other side. Let's say 3.5 different public address seatings. Okay. The original stadium, the remodeled stadium, in between the stadiums where it was all jerry-rigged, and then this one. So the way it works, and I set up my own system. I have 2 spotters. I don't know how many I had over the years. Once somebody gets a spotting job, they never want to leave it. I'll tell you that. One is a guy who works on campus, and his name Jeremy, and I really came to rely on him. To be honest with you, he follows Notre Dame football far more closely than me. So he's going to know who the 3rd string left guard is, and so he spots offense for me. Okay. My brother-in-law, Ron, sits on my right. He does yardage, gained, lost, and the scoring drives. I spot both offenses myself. And anybody who's ever come up, I used to be able to have guests, but now the quarters are too tight. They walk away totally amazed at how it works. It may take longer to play a game, Pat, than it used to, but what happens in game is much, much quicker. Fewer huddles, the whole thing. So there's a play, and I go first and say, it's Tariq Racy for a gain of 6 or something like that. I turn to Ron, and he'll have like 6. Turn to Jeremy. He gives me the number of the tackler. That all happens, bim bam boom, just like that. So.
Right. So that's how you're spotting the actual information. And you've already alluded to the fact that sometimes it's a Samoan name, or it's a name that has to roll off the tongue, and all this has to happen very quickly. So how do you prepare for that? And I saw one video of you rattling off names just over and over as if there was something wrong with you, just rattling off names until you had the muscle memory.
There is something wrong with me. That's
well, tell me about that prep.
In the past, they were real tardy with stuff. I never got diddly until Friday afternoon, and then they would change scripts. Everything changed when they brought in our first guy to put together the audio and video out there, Michael Bonner, who came from the Broncos, and he was with the Yankees before that. He would put up with none of that. I would have my scripts by Tuesday. He had everything down to a science. He was the one that came up with the idea. You mean to tell me you have him reading all this pregame and timeout crap live? He says, are you asking for trouble or what? He says, plus, if he records it, you realize I can time the video to a recording. And so that got out of my way. And so I said to Mike and all my people, I said, what an incredible thought we have here. I'm going to work the football game. That's it. I'm here on Saturday. I didn't mind putting in 10 hours in the week. I didn't mind. I do all my homework at home, get everything on Wednesday, the 2 deep charts for both teams, pronunciation charts for both teams. And I literally sit down at the kitchen counter and spend hours going over it. One of the funniest stories is in the past when I got it on Friday. So I had to, as soon as I got home, I had to do homework for a couple hours. Every time I got up to go to the refrigerator for another beer, I'd turn around and my cat Homer was laying all over the charts, looking at me like, hey, dude, you want to pay me some attention too? And he says, plus, who are you talking to out here? Who are you talking to? So I put in a lot of time. I'm not afraid to say it. When it comes to my job, I am anal retentive. I don't like mystery. And I hate surprises. Do not pull a surprise on me on Saturday. I get there. I have to get there at the exact same time. And I want to be in my chair 2 hours before kickoff. That way I can set up all my charts. I paste them down. I tape pronunciations behind me. Ron puts them up on the glass window next to us was the replay guys. By the way, they have no personality, the replay guys. They are the most boring people you ever met. So I have to have everything set up. And then an hour before kickoff, I run outside and have my last cigarette. And then I come back and don't mess with me. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean to be curt, but and the other rule I have, number one is no profanity in the front row. I tell people, if I hear any profanity in the front row, you will lose your job. I said, if I would have my finger on this button, say getting ready, and you say something, it's going to leak through. And we'll all be looking for work on Monday. So no profanity and never guess at anything. I tell Jeremy, hey, if he didn't get the tackle, don't worry about it. They're not going to miss that. That means there was like 6 guys in there anyway. So don't worry about it. And if Ron isn't exactly sure, don't give me the yardage. They're not going to miss that. I mean, they are looking, and there's other places they can see that junk. So, that's the way it is. I always lived in fear of making a big mistake over the system, and I never did. You know what I'm saying? Because if you make a mistake in this day and age, you know what happens? It's on social media before you left the game. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I'm going to edit them all out of this video. So don't worry, you can make mistakes. Well, over the years, with everything that you've talked about, the energy you developed, the finding ways to interact with the students at South Dining Hall, you made a lot of friendships, as one would, over doing that for 39 years. But 2 of the relationships seem to stand out the most to me. People you got really close to. One was Father Ted Hesburgh, and the other was Sergeant Tim McCarthy of the Indiana State Police. Tell me about those relationships and what they meant to you.
When I first met Tim, I guess nobody told him there was a new PA announcer, and he wanders up somewhere at the start of the second half to the PA booth, and I'm working, and then there's a timeout, and I turn around, and he looks at me and says, "Who are you?" And I said, "That's not a very nice way to say hello." We ended up developing an incredibly close relationship. In the off season, we went to breakfast once a month. It was me who talked him into retirement. I felt he might have been slipping a little bit. So I had a talk with him, and I said, "Tim, I want you to consider it. The decision is yours. But let's say you make a mistake of some sizable portion." I said, "That'll be on YouTube in an hour, and some people will consider that your lasting image. People only remember things at the end." And you know what he said to me? "Thank God he called." He said, "I've been trying to make up my mind." And he said, "You just did it for me." And of course, he passed away a little more than a year or 2 after that. But Father Ted was my president, of course. And then I worked for WNDU, which the university owned. In effect, Father Hesburgh was the head of WNDU. Father Joyce was more of the hands-on. So we became close over the years and doing interviews, and I could call him up. In his retirement, we became even closer, I swear, because when I went overseas, I would smuggle back Cuban cigars for Father. And I called the office, and Melanie, his aide de camp, I could hear her, "Hey, Father, Mike Collins is here. He just came back. Send him up." And so we became very close. And then once they put him in the Holy Cross home for the elderly priests, for a number of years, I went there every August to talk to the older priests about the upcoming season. And this one year, Father is there now. And I got done and I'm walking out. Now, by this point, Father couldn't see much of anything. And I'm 5 steps away. He says, Michael, come back here, sit down." And here's what he said to me, Pat. The kindest thing ever said to me by anybody at Notre Dame, certainly better than any of my professors. He said, "Michael, I want to thank you for all you've done in your lifetime for Our Lady's University." I was so stunned that even I was at a loss for words. And I said, "Father, let me tell you something. I am not exaggerating. I've tried to live my adult life keeping you in mind. And I would often say to myself, Mike, never do anything that would embarrass Father Hesburgh. Never. I admired him more than any other man I ever met in my life. Well, I had a grandfather, but he died when I was 7. But I just loved the man, looked up to him. He told me some funny stories over the years. I did the final interview with him. I just told this story in one of these Cameo things the other day. Well, it was going to be a week-long thing. It was going to run for a week, so a lot of shooting to do, and we did it all over campus. And this was set up by the lake. I had to ask obvious questions, but I also wanted to ask some maybe not so obvious. Well, I get to an obvious one, and I said, so Father, as you look back, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment? Well, I knew the answer, and he said coeducation, of course. Then he wags his finger at me, and he says, Michael, you remember what it was like here on this campus back then. For God's sake, if one of those poor co-eds from St. Mary's had walked across this campus at high noon, it was feeding time at the monkey house. And I said, Father, I can't use that. And Father says, of course you can use it. Didn't I just say it? And I used that whole thing. And so I admired him more than anybody else at Notre Dame and more than anybody else in my life. So.
Well, he was right. You have done a tremendous amount for the University of Notre Dame, and the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg is so thrilled to share in some of these stories, these experiences you've had. I'm just glad I'll note one other thing. You haven't completely hung up the microphone yet. Is it true you're still calling spring training games for the Pirates in Florida?
Yeah, they've already asked me back, but we at this point don't know for sure what format that's going to take because of COVID. My first game is actually, I think, my birthday, March 1st. But it wouldn't surprise me if the schedule has to be altered. But I actually informed the Pirates before I informed Notre Dame because I didn't want it to get out and they would draw a conclusion that I was retiring altogether. So I said, no, this has nothing to do with baseball. And I told his name is Jimmy Tradinich, is their media guy. And the best in the business. I said, Jimmy, look, let me put it this way. The only way I'm leaving baseball is if you and one other guy carry me out on the stretcher. I said, I'm not leaving baseball. It's too much fun, Pat. It's just, that was a dream of mine as a kid. I'm still, even after all these years, on a beautiful day, sitting up in that little press box right on top of the field, the sun and the palm trees. My first introduction to spring training were black and white pictures in the Pittsburgh Press. So, no, I'm still going to do baseball. If somebody else wants me to do something, I think I would consider it. But football's a grind. I got to tell you, people say to me, hey, can you stop over after the game? Well, I used to stop over after the game, but no more. For years, I haven't. I literally go home, grab a beer, put my feet up and probably fall asleep watching a game on television, so because I put everything into it, pal.
I can tell. And thank you so much for telling us about it. I want to be respectful of your time. This has been just great, Mike. Best of wishes to you in your retirement. And thank you for joining the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg.
I do have to say, the only reason I'm not wearing my Gettysburg blue shirt they gave me, I wore it earlier this week and I went to put it on this afternoon. I said, oh gosh, it's in the laundry basket. So thank you for the shirt. I mean it. As soon as this clears up, I want that turkey dinner, and we have to go to the Knights of Columbus.
You got a deal. And Mike, we'll get you some people hiring you on Cameo for birthday wishes and other wishes. Yep. But we look forward to membership applications out of Florida because you're wearing that shirt around. So thank you.
Okay. All right, dude.
And Rick, I'll kick it back over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Pat.
All right, Rick.
How you doing, Mike? Again, thank you for taking your time and going back to your interview. I want to thank you very much because the experience of Notre Dame, I could speak for everybody here in Gettysburg, sitting in the stadium and hearing your voice, we're going to miss. And I just want to thank from the bottom of my heart.
I'll miss it too.
We are going to miss that voice because that is part of the tradition of Notre Dame. And I have this in my kitchen to remind me of you every day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you guys. I'll see you. I'll stay in touch and I'll see you soon.
Can you give us one more? Here come the Irish before you leave.
You betcha, my man. Here come the Irish.
Thank
you very much. Good luck to you.
Right.
Thank
See you guys. Talk to you soon.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mike. Bye-bye.